Yep. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another session. Hope you all are having a great time so far. Please welcome Deniz Kartepe from Miro. He's not only the best UX researcher, but also a sought after mentor with over 90 sessions on ADP list so far. So please don't forget to add your questions. We'll be taking it at the end of the session. And without any further delay, I hand over the stage to Dennis. Thank you so much.
Many, thank you. That's flattering, but not true. There are many amazing researchers out there. But welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here. And I'm so glad to be a part of the festival, and I'm so glad to be giving this presentation that I'll be giving you. And I'm seeing everyone talking in the chat, and yeah, hello everyone as well. Yeah, so excited. Let's jump right in. I will start by sharing my screen first, and then start talking about it. All right. So today's topic, I think you're able to see the screen now, is going to be using UX research outcomes effectively. And I will start by just laying the groundwork for it about why we are talking about this, why I am talking about this. And now we will talk a bit about theory and try to explain the problem space and the solution space and what it looks like. Then we'll go dive deeper into the theory and the practice about the best things that we can do to be better at using the outcomes. And it's not only UX research, and this is not only for UX researchers, but this is going to be for everyone, for the people who do research. So I think we will be casting there about just making sure that our findings are more usable, actionable, and in turn make a difference. Because in the long run, that is what makes this user-centric transformation see the insights and then see their value and be able to really use them. So let's go. Yeah, I want to start by the introduction. As I've said, why this topic? And this topic evolved from a 4-hour, 2-day training that I was giving before with the same name, exploring using UX research outcomes effectively. And I have anonymized the avatars now. But when we did an on the board voting about which part people feeling most comfortable about in any research project, as you can see, planning and execution was on this very comfortable part, where post-execution, using the research findings, a lot of people were feeling very uncomfortable. And so this topic is important because it is critical. It causes a deviation in the long run from user centricity because people just feel like it is not worth it, or it is just not that mission critical. And it is underestimated because it is hidden behind the immediacy bias during planning. We always give more effort and thought into um, planning the research, making like amazing templates, and then doing the best sessions, executing them, and hope that it will automatically just get resolved along the way. And thus, it is hurting the prospect of user centricity. And how that happens is it is causing this negative feedback loop because when the end of the research is not as good as the other parts, people kind of lose the momentum. People kind of lose the energy. Both the person who did the research and the person and the people who are benefiting from it. And so this negative feedback loop results in less researches being done and less engagement in the upcoming researches. And we're talking about this topic because we can change it. All it takes is a mindset shift, a clearer perspective, and a new set of tools that we can employ. Not even new, but some new repurposed tools that we can employ and change our approach. And this way we can just turn things around their head and have the best part of any research at the very end. And that energy just keeps us moving forward, start the new cycle with a renewed energy, renewed engagement from stakeholders. And well, that can be amazing. So that is what we will be looking at today. And it will be, as I've said, for people who do research. It is not only for UX researchers. So I'm looking forward to input from everyone. So in the chat, in the Q&A, you can ask specific questions about whether if you are missing any part of it or whether if you're feeling that some parts will not apply. But yeah, basically, just get engaged. I will be watching the chat. I'll be watching the Q&A, and I can just steer the conversation in that direction. Right? Wonderful. So, and of course, the second part automatically comes to why me. And Tasmini briefly introduced me. I am a UX researcher at Miro, and my career has been nothing but UX research. I started off with it during my time in university with my professors that eventually founded the company. So we were heavily focused on usability experts. As usability experts, we were focused on usability only in the beginning, and then very heavily on information architecture, which is finding navigation experience. And main projects were about big category restructuring of e-commerce companies. I'll be giving some examples about those as well. Then eventually I went to bigger companies like Vodafone, and then startups like Ara Health. And eventually I found my spot in Miro, and I have been the canvas and collaboration researcher, and I've been really enjoying it. And that was my learning phase. I have learned a lot of learnings that brings me to where we are right now to talk about this topic. And I've been able to try a lot of things because when I was in these positions, I was in a consultancy environment. I was working as an information architecture specialist, did scaled research ops in startups, scales ups, etc. And then I was able to try a lot of the new things, iterate, see what worked, see what didn't, and eventually I started to share it as well. So I love ADP List, and I've been there for over 2 years now, I guess. This week, actually tomorrow, I am making my 100th mentorship session. So right now I'm in 99 sessions, and I love it because the more I talk with my mentees, the more I realize this in this retrospective look at what I am doing, what I can change, or what I need to prioritize, or what I can learn from them as well. And this is such a fulfilling experience. And I've been talking about this topic, giving workshops about this topic, and yeah, kind of sharing information and learning from others as well. So hence everything kind of got together and brought me to speaking about this in front of you. So the topic, I explained why we're doing it and why I am the one who is doing it. Then let's slowly start diving in. This is a text heavy text, but the reason why I put it here is we will just skip it in a minute, is to give you a lay of the land. So we'll be talking about some stuff. As I said, primarily, I already alluded to some things. Research has three phases. It is planned, it is executed, and it is used. And this flow is circular. So the performance of the last cycle immediately affects how the next one is going to be. And as I've talked about before, immediacy bias has a strong indication in the decision making. When we are looking at research, we first see the planning ahead. We see amazing templates. We can see an amazing board that we can create, and then we can think about execution. But the usage of findings is one step ahead. It is hidden behind those two walls, you know. So we do not see that immediate need to actually think about it a lot. And those initial steps get our attention, and we focus on them disproportionately. And utilization of research phase thus is often overlooked. But this approach creates a problem because when we look at the immediacy bias by turning it over its head, we see how important that last part is for the next cycle. And the thing that will leave the most impression and ensure that we will get the buy-in is actually that latter stage of the research. How we finish it with a bang, how much engagement we get, and how people feel elated and enabled by the research. So the important thing there is an under or misutilized research can be more harmful than no research at all because we have taken people's attention, we have taken people's cognitive load, and if they did not see value, it will be much harder next time when they come. And it will damage the feasibility and probability of the future researches. So this is the summary. People give more attention to the earlier phases, and they just hope that the last part will just work out fine because we planned everything nicely, and that fails. And this disappointment rises in stakeholders and the person who does the research because they see that people are not getting engaged. Other people see, well, why would I come for the next research presentation? And due to these deficiencies in how we utilize research, we see that the prospect of user-centered experience design practices are disrupted because we do not have enough attention as we had before. So that is what we are going to be trying to tackle today. So I love Star Wars, and I put some photos there. I'll try to tie them to my narrative. But yeah, the ineffective use of findings is the existential crisis of UX research practices. I want to understand this when we are talking about the problem space. So we are not only talking about a lack of something, but active disruption of that thing. So moving forward, I have a love and hate relationship with running. I run, but kind of do it as a punishment to myself. So I wanted to include it as an example because I did a run that I thought that I couldn't do. And the reason why I was able to do it got me thinking how it can apply to what we are doing. So the question that I have here is, are researchers sprints or marathons? So when you imagine that you're a marathon runner, the most exciting parts are probably the start where everyone is together, everyone is trying to speed up. And then the middle sections, for example, Istanbul Marathon on the halfway road, you're passing the Bosphorus Bridge, amazing scenery, and everyone is having their cameras out and so on. They are cheering for you, and then you speed up. You focus on these board parts, and you overestimate their visibility and impact. So you increase your pace, speed up, and as you keep that up, you are actually it actually takes a toll on your own stamina. And as you go, you hit the wall in the last 10 kilometers. And that hitting a wall is a really hard feeling. So your body collapses and you lose more time than the initial gains you had from that excitement. If you sprinted in the first 100 meters, it's going to affect you much more terribly than what you gained from the sprint in the end. And the result is, if you cannot finish the marathon strongly or not at all, what you did in the first 20 kilometers doesn't really matter. Your time will not be recorded, and you won't be going to any other marathons. So when people will look back, they won't really care whether if you were there at all, because you don't have what it takes to show for it so that people will see you fit for the next one. Interesting, right? So before, as I've said, yeah, my point is researchers are like marathons. And I ran this marathon, the Istanbul one, and the farthest one I ran before it was 20 kilometers. I had no idea how to pace myself. Therefore, I just went there with sheer confidence. And that was a very stupid confidence. You know, if I was going to do it alone, I was definitely going to fail. But I will be telling you about one person, the person that you're seeing here in this green t-shirt. His name was Unal, and I will talk about how he helped me finish it. So I start 2 kilometers in. He sees me sprinting, and then he comes to me and says, "What time do you expect?" And I say, like, "What time? I don't know. Like, I've never ran a marathon before." And then he's a pacer. So pacers are people responsible for setting the pace for other racers, right? So he tells me, "You won't be able to finish this like this. Come to me, stand by my side. We will run this race together." And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And then the moment I go next to him, he's like, "You will lower your pace right now. You will do your hands like this, just shake them off, just control your breathing, and do not lose your attention, not lose your focus in setting up your pace. Follow what I do, listen to what I say, and don't talk." And for the next hours, he just took me by hand. As I've said, I've never ran more than 20. And the last time I ran 20 kilometers, I puked. And with him, I was just able to actually make it to the end of the line, finish a marathon. And I was like, how did that happen? That was through controlling your pace, knowing where you are and where you want to be, instead of having this distracted focus about like, oh, there's a shiny thing right now, let me run. Oh, there's this Bosphorus Bridge, let me just jump. No. And then adjusting your energy exertion pragmatically, using it where it matters, and then welcoming support and inciting engagement. But enough with the analogy. I want to return to our topic. And so the key part here is how you finish a marathon matters. And I have been, as I've said, a mentor on ADP list for a really long time with almost 100 sessions now. And throughout these countless sessions, I was with a lot of mid-level product designers, researchers, product managers, and so on, and also juniors. And there were some teams that were emerging, right? The requested subject most of the time was proper planning and execution of the research. How do I run an amazing interview? How can I use this amazing template, board, etc., for planning? But the more I asked my mentees about why it was happening, what we realized was what they were suffering from was in fact not about planning or executing, but the last mile problem, how it was being finished, why there was a lack of impact, or how teams were getting engaged with research, right? So um, that got me thinking, what am I also doing wrong or what I am doing right that could have an impact there? And how that last mile problem can be addressed properly, because a lot of people were thinking that doing the planning right solves it automatically, which wasn't the case. So a simple question there that we think that the answer is really easy, but it actually isn't, is this: do we research for the sake of research or for the benefit of our stakeholders of the project? And of course, we would automatically say, of course, for the project, but most of the times the practices that we use, even though they look like that in the beginning, doesn't turn out to be not as much user-centered or like project-centered as they are. And we will see why that is now. So yeah, when we are looking at this, these three steps I said are circular. And then there is this using part and planning part, the end of circle being connected, causing a problem. So yeah, planning or execution of a research has hundreds of templates, and they are not about the most memorable part of it. So the conclusion just becomes a bit underwhelming. And the end result is prevention of continuous and evolving research processes. And that is what we want to get, because this is like a flywheel. Once we start this off and we see cycles evolving, getting better, better iteration with iterations, every single research is building on top of another, and every next one is even more exciting, then that is how we become user-centric in a company. So that is right now being prevented, and we want to see how that can be reversed. And back to Star Wars. Star Wars. So efficient usage of research findings go through this mindset shift, clearer perspective, a diverse tool set that we'll be talking soon, and a change in approach. We already alluded to most of these parts, but now we will be getting more tangible. So from now onwards, we explored the problem space, and now we'll be diving into what it actually means, and we'll be talking about theory and discuss a lot of practical examples. What I kind of did for this training and for this speech was I went through the last 10 years of my career and looked at what worked, what didn't, what problems I faced, how I solved them, and how I tried methods that just didn't work out, right? And so this photocopy that we have, the good and bad examples, will allow us to get learnings from them. We will extract learnings, and afterwards we will get those learnings and turn them into three tactical principles. Ultimately, these tactical principles will enable us to form a strategic principle. And once we talk about that, then we can talk about real-world examples, how we can get there. So 6 examples are learnings, 3 tactical principles, and 1 strategic principle. Let's go at it. The tactical principle, the first tactical principle I want to talk about is actionable. And it is a buzzword, and it kind of fits everything, but we got to unpack it in this scenario, and we got to unpack what it means for a research outcome to be actionable, and we will use some examples for it. So I will give 1 bad on the dark side and 1 good example on the white side, and these are not necessarily good or bad, like they could have turned into amazing examples, or maybe they worked in real life, but in the exact execution part, they had some shortcomings that I could observe that could change differently. So I will first talk about an online banking experience research that was done years ago. And it was, as I said, neurometric, biometric research. People the tests were being conducted by electroencephalograms devices like these bonnets, and then galvanic skin response for fingers to observe the stress levels of the users as they are using these banking tools product. And it was a very long research, extremely robust and complex, and it had detailed reporting, follow up with the company, and so on. And sometime later, what we realized was the research was effectively used as a way to show off that that the team has done research, but not necessarily using it as an actionable thing to change what was being done there. And it had amazing graphs. It had very good this way of reporting it. The photos look amazing because they look so scientific, but in the end, the things that we can get out of it, it was just not well constructed enough for the team to be able to say, okay, this is what we do in light of this. And it ended up being a research theater. So it was played really well. It was received really well. But did it really solve anything? Not as much. And then comparatively, I want to talk about something else, another project. One of the first projects in my career that I still allude to this day, it was the information architecture research that we have done for a very big e-commerce company. And it included 3 tests, card sorting tests, a lot of user interviews to dive deeper into how people search for products. So it was a complete new finding and navigation experience inside. And what we produced as results were hundreds, maybe thousands of new category structures produced on Excel spreadsheets with thematic filtering suggestions about how we can show people different types of products, how people would search for products, and what could be the smoothest experience there could be. And every single Excel spreadsheet that was prepared, every single presentation was just moved right into the workflow. And over the course of months, this project took 3 years, and every month something else was changing. And over time, the whole category structure of that whole e-commerce company was completely revamped by that research alone. So when you compare the effectiveness of these two things, you get to ask, why did it happen there and not there? And it was because the findings from the search experience research was so direct. You have to do this. You are going to do that. This is how it is going to work. And it was as clear as day. No interpretation. There wasn't even a need for a meeting. You just go and do it. So that is how difference in being actionable happen. So research outputs should be prepared in a clear, simple, and actionable manner, because actionable research is the research that creates change. No matter how good the research is, if it does not address right questions in the right format for people to consume and act on, it is not actionable. So they should be specific, clear, and goal-oriented. So we need to really understand business, their needs, and the expectations of the team and the stakeholders that we have, and include an action plan to findings that we are bringing to the table. And the stakeholders are like users. So I will come to this in the strategic principle, but no one can have as much context about the research as the person who did the research. So when the direct effects of what can be done later on are not added to the research report, we leave the cognitive load on top of the shoulders of our stakeholders. So they need to come, they need to really consume the research findings, then understand. And much like users, our stakeholders will not like cognitive load. If we put this burden on them, it won't be working out the way they would want to. And how to be actionable? This is interesting because it goes through asking some questions. It is like, how will this output be used by my stakeholders? Let's ask this to every specific thing we bring to table and be critical about it. What do I expect this finding to change? Does it indicate a cognitive change or directly point to an action? And once we start asking these questions, it is kind of like making this product evaluation, right? And we can either combine findings or evolve a finding into being more actionable. But this is a great heuristic to keep in mind when we are thinking about actionability. So that is our tactical principle number one. The second one is, I think, really closely tied, but it is adaptable. You can also call this flexible. But what it means is explored in these two examples. So a research that I did several years ago, as I said, I was going to give some bad examples, and this was my bad example because this research was like my child. So I did a very large scale survey that tackled so many complex research questions, and then it turned into this huge, over 200 slide long report that I spent months pouring my heart into, and it had something for almost every single team. But it was also you can see from the screenshot how heavy it was to consume, right? And there were sub-reports being created for different product branches, different versions, hundreds of comments inside and so on. But what I realized in the end was it was a report that a lot of people talked about, but no one really knew what was inside because it was so heavy and no one just had that time and energy to go in and consume it themselves because it was just not consumable. It was not the right fit that was adapted to the needs of the specific stakeholders I was working with. On the contrary, I had another research where, in a long-term research, I observed one finding that was out of the scope for that specific research, but it was extremely important, and it was too big and too critical. So what I did was I put it aside and kept building more insights on it with other researchers too. I then wrote a thought piece on this insight and created into a short presentation. It was not the requirement from the team, or no one else was asking about it, but I did this proactively. It was a topic that was not directly on my plate. I turned it into a 10-minute video, and then the thought piece was about a critique on the strategic path that we were taking, right? And the end result was, because it was so consumable, it was just a 10-minute video that was just condensed and consisted of only the most critical things and nothing else. It started these strategic discussions about the future direction that we can take. And it led up to effectively, alongside many other researches that kind of popped up as well, and other discussions at even the C levels, to lead up to some paradigm shifts. A normal report, like the one on the left side, wouldn't have been able to be the answer there, because this required a very important cognitive load from people with very short attention spans, very short capacity to listen to things. So it was condensed in such a way that it could be consumed company wide, and the reason was how it was made adaptable to its current situation. So the tactical principle two, therefore, is the format of research outputs should be appropriate to the need, and a research can be produced in dozens of different ways, from a report to a composition. You can sing a song about a research insight if that is what your team members need, if that is what your company needs, right? And every single methodology can fulfill a different need. So the foundations and circumstances of any situation that you're in should be analyzed correctly, and you should align the way you're producing it in that way, because different situations require different outputs, and all output formats are consumed differently. No one comes with the same mindset to reading a 200-page report or to watching a 10-minute talk track recording about one finding. So the way to understand what can be used here would be, we should be again asking ourselves these questions. What do I expect again from this research? Am I expecting a quick action from my counterparts, or a fundamental change, development of their ideas, of their cognition? And what kind of medium do my counterparts need to progress towards this goal? So um, as you can see, the how of every single heuristic comes and boils down to what questions we ask and with what hypotheses we test our research outcomes. And I am saying this because this will be very important for our strategic principle. Now, moving on to the last one. Tactical principle 1 and 2 are done, actionable and adaptable. And now the third one is engaged, with a question mark, because engaged will have two meanings when we're discussing it. And first example that I'm going to give is, I have been in this place a couple of times. I do a research, but that research is being done for an external stakeholder, maybe an agency, for example, and we're doing it for brand, I don't know, brand identity, something that is mixed with market research. In this example, it was a very intense and detailed project, but the agency and company relationships was being conducted by other stakeholders. So it was like this ear-to-ear whispering sort of thing. I was saying something, someone else was taking that message and taking it to the person who was going to act on those insights. And all the researches, therefore, were consumed secondhand. And then that way, when we see that the research outputs are delivered to the agency and presented by other members of the team, we were observing a big misinterpretation of the research that disconnected it from the context with which we made it. And that is really important, because if the researcher, people who does the research, it doesn't have to be a UX researcher, as I've said, isn't there in that meeting, any research can be interpreted in very different ways and can be used to justify any decision, right? So distortion of findings was used as a supportive argument for the decisions that they were making, and it almost never turns out to be a good thing. But a complete opposition to this could be, maybe if you're following me on LinkedIn, you would see my favorite team is async collaboration team in Miro, and I've been with them since I joined, and I've been working with them for 3 years. And what I get to be this part of the team and participating in as many product reviews and team activities as possible. I'm running a lot of researches with them. We are physically in the same location, then we have regular ideation and critique sessions. So it is not about the research itself. The research is being done, but I'm always there to advocate for the findings. I'm always there to iterate on them. I'm always there to be able to talk with Srechko, our designer, or Vihar and Rishita, our engineering manager and product manager, continuously to evolve what it is going to turn into. And I am in control and how it is being used. And I can be challenged. They can say, no, you are interpreting this wrong. And they might be right, because they have been there within the research from ground zero as well. So that is the beauty of being completely embedded in multiple teams. Of course, you have to choose your timing right, because you have as much capacity, but being really close from start to finish in research projects becomes super important. and it results in great team dynamics. And in this case, it evolved into innovative products like TalkTrack, Comment Insights, and Board Insights. And it has just been a joy to work and to have this complete confidence in each other and the fact that researchers are going to be used. So when we make this compare and contrast, it becomes really important. So the key takeaway is the researcher must be the DRI of his own work, but also involve stakeholders in a very proactive and like not only proactive but like very engaged way. They still welcome the presence of the researcher and they become like the other advocates. So what is important for this engagement is being the permanent sponsor of the research. We cannot do the research and leave it because we do not know what is going to be done with it. Because as we said, research is highly interpretable and anyone can pull it in any direction and then repackage it. And that is a bit dangerous. And if we talk about how this could be done, engagement can be established with some small methods, some tools that we can have, or maybe it's just in the company culture. But the safest way to go at this would be ways of working exercises, because a person who does a research provides a service to the team that they work with, and that involves mutual agreement. So if I'm a researcher, I can say, well, I'll be spending 2 months for you. I will be finding out things that will help you, and I will spend a lot of time, energy, effort for it. And if I am doing this, this is what I want in return. List the demands and talk about how we are going to be working together. And that is really critical. Most of the time, this just happens verbally. But if the situation requires it, it can be done in written format as well. So this becomes our third tactical principle and completes the trifecta. So we're looking at these. And now consider these columns of a monument that we are building. Now, with these three tactical principles, we put the strategic principle approach on top that I would really like everyone to just take away after this session, right? So the effective findings happen at the intersection of these. And once we zoom in into that black circle and into what it means, it becomes this. User experience research is a product, and whoever does the research is its product manager. And it is up to them to make this product successful. So considering user experience research as a product becomes really critical. And if we were to unpack it, this is what it looks like. If it is a product, it should be user focused because a product is addressed at users that it wants as a target group. The basic elements of these are usability, usefulness, desirability, kind of like any product that we are working on. And we are on ADPLS BeMore conference, so I guess everyone is working on a product, or at least wants to work on a product. The DRI stands for direct responsible individual. Robert, I'm so sorry, I just missed it. I just saw it now. I hope it helps. Okay, moving on. As I said, basic elements become usability, usefulness, and desirability. And therefore, just like a product, we can evaluate our research projects from this perspective. And another key point of treating it as a product is we can iterate on it. Every single time, we can try something else and see what happens and move forward from there. So iterate for the better. This is the essence of what we build on top of everything that we have discussed so far. So we talked about our three tactical principles. We finished with the strategic principle. We had UX research outcomes are a product. And now, as we talked about iteration, I want to get to the point where we get to the meat of it. So tactical principles and tactical methods, right? So let's combine talk with practice. So in order to be able to apply these tactical and strategic principles in our own work processes, I have tried some methods. So now I will try to share them. And when I'm sharing them, I will have some tags on the top right side about which tactical principle they address themselves to. For example, a thing that I loved using before was an insights refinement workshop. And the tags for this are the actionable and engaged principles. So this was a workshop that I created for a large and complex and impactful project in 2022. And my idea was bring the results first to the team and we refine and prioritize together. So we take half a day, everyone dives in to the findings. We divide them into groups, and they say there are engineers, product designers, managers, etc. there. How important is this finding? How actionable is this finding? What needs to be done to make it actionable? And at the end of the meeting, we go off with everything decided. We will be prioritizing this, and that, and we will be discarding this for now. We will send this for another round of research just to be sure. We will create some concepts, blah, blah. So normally, if researches are not actionable enough, people look at the report, everyone claps, and then goes home. Next day they come and they forget. And this way, we get the buy-in in advance. So it makes sure that we hit home in actionability through accountability and alignment, right? But as I've said, UX research outcomes is a product. And I saw that something was not working well enough for it. So I iterated. And then the next workshop involved research cards. And this was the second iteration of it, because what I saw was it was still not talking about the direct responsible individual. It was still not talking about the exact action plan for any single research, because it was getting distributed. So we did a on-site with the research team. And this was a concept that I came up with, which was research cards. How can we turn every single finding into a card? And during that workshop, people come in, and when they are discussing a specific insight, they fill up its card. And if it is going to be used, then that card has a direct responsible individual. Boom, it is actionable and it's engaged. And people already talk about why it matters, how it will be done, what priority it is, and so forth. So it was good. The other example, I'm going to pass this because I already told about this. And a good example of adaptability was the opinion piece that I was telling about. So it was talking about an overarching insight that was not necessarily about a single research, but really warranted another thing on its own. And as it was not a research that was being asked for, it had to be in a different format than a report, because the report takes time to consume and it takes cognitive load to be able to use. And instead, I thought about how we can make this the most easily consumable as possible. And it turned into a video. And it was incredibly good, effective. And the question there is, what would work for your audience? What product does your base need? And in what sort of consummation behavior, right? So do not take this as a single example and think, okay, I will make videos from now on. It can be literally anything. So another example that I can get to that we can use is collaborative analysis activity. This is again about engaged. We are trying to get as many people in these processes as possible, because the trick is, if they get engaged, that means that they will be able to say, whoa, this is my work as well. And if people can feel accountability for that project, every research finding becomes much more actionable. So the example that we have here is collaborative analysis activity. And it is about getting the team members and saying, this is the insight. So look at this. This is a graph from our survey. And now researcher, designer, PM, engineering, and other people will come in and give their takes. Of course, the person who did the research will in return turn it to a report. But now what happens is, before the research is conducted, people are talking about it. People are discussing it amongst themselves. And we already get the buy-in. And this is very strong, because now people are already aware that something is going to be cooked up, and they are vested, because now it is their outcome as well. They already know what will be brought out of here, because if engineering manager said this is happening because of blah blah blah, like this technical properties that other people weren't aware of, now research is directly becoming this one thing that is shared across the board. This is the team's effort now. So we know that next time when we are doing the actual presentation, our engineering manager is going to be one of the most engaged persons in it and make sure that the insights will be used. And that is so strong. So moving on, another thing that we can talk about, I built this like 5 years ago, at a telco company. And the way it happened was I got inspired from Tomer Sharon's Atomic Research Repository, Polaris. And then the way I realized its effectiveness was how adaptable it was, because atomic research repositories are breaking down and classify all research findings and make it adaptable for every need. The example that you would see there was, there would be 4,000 different findings, but they would all be tagged in the spreadsheet accordingly. And that data table could be turned into a hub for every single team, right? So it can be if there is an e-commerce team within the group, for example, we can list all the research findings for them in their own filtered out way, and they can turn it into a Kanban, as you can see. So with atomic research repositories, tracking can be ensured, backlogs can be created for all the RIs, and it can be self-serve. That is one of the most sustainable, adaptable ways that we can do it. And more importantly, it becomes this actual hub that is living and breathing, that people actually see the value of research. But atomic research repositories are a bit interesting to keep in mind some limitations. They are, if there is a large group that will benefit from it, for example, roles and restrictions should be very well defined. This cannot be a fully collaborative activity. If people are going to come in and everyone will do anything, it will just be a mess. So if you will try doing this, you can find a lot of sources on the web, but one key thing is new findings should only be included according to certain conventions and should be done under control. Otherwise, they could be susceptible to turning chaotic. Nevertheless, one of the strongest tools that you can use in your UX research arsenal, but requires a lot of maturity, a lot of care, and a lot of effort. Nevertheless, amazing method and an epitome of adaptability and flexibility, how research can be used in any different format. So it's very strong. Now, speaking of super complex methodologies, I want to talk about one of the simplest methodologies that is equally effective, and it is amazing. Sometimes the most basic tactics can be the most effective. And when I first started with the async team, the team that I told you, my favorite one, 3 years ago, I was aware that I needed to kickstart a flywheel where everything would be, where everyone would get super engaged, right? And what I wanted to do was nothing complex at all. I just said, why don't I give a baklava prize to the person who attends to most user interviews, because I knew that if they came to the user interviews, they would leave with like a huge enthusiasm, right? So I promised a baklava reward to the team member, and end result was even one engineer attended to 70% of the research sessions. It was Sirin, and she's amazing. And then all the other people as well attended to at least 3-4 interviews. And it was great because this way, with our first research we started, we knew that we were going to be very user-centered from the beginning. So the baklava leaderboard was foot in the door tactic. I did it once with that team and I never had to do it again, because now everyone was aware like what a user interview could be. And they were excited about being there, even though the baklava wasn't there. Because to be fair, when I gave the baklava to Sirin, she shared it with all of us. So it was still a team activity. So it wasn't about the baklava itself, but about what it was standing for. So when you think about it, for just 30 euros, the basic approach changed the team's attitude toward research from the start. And compared to Atomic Research Repository, it is much more simple, but equally fun and engaging. Actually, more fun, yeah. So another example is going to be pre-mortem workshop. I know that I'm running short on time, so you can also find this on my Miroverse template and on LinkedIn, I think. But what it does is it is turning post-mortem assessment of engineers on its head and says, how can we assess danger and risks in advance? So identify and analyze potential project risks. What we do with the team is we sit down, we think about how the product can fail in 1 year, 6 months, and then think about what research questions, if answered, can help us mitigate those risks. So it's a 90-minute workshop and involves team members out of research in a creative way, because we are reframing what a research question is and take a stab at it through a more relatable angle. If I asked about what user research questions the team had, it wouldn't have worked. But if I had, if we turned around like this, now people can imagine. By doing this work, we also ensure that there is a stakeholder buy-in, because that is the research question that they generated, that they won't answer it. It is the question that they wrote, so they know that when the researcher is doing the research, they want to be there. When the report is being created, they want to be there because they feel the need for it. It is theirs. So equally good. And then continuous communication. The reason why I talk about this is research findings are too heavy when it's a report or whatever, but it provides a lot of information in a very short time. Why not separate it? When we are conducting research, analyzing findings, what I do is I always create a separate Slack channel, and as the findings come, I share a video snippet, do my take, and ask one question to all the stakeholders in that channel, and then they come down and then start discussing it. And so a research finding is already being cooked by the time the research is being done. So once the report is prepared, everyone is aware of what we want to do. Everyone has already had these discussions. They are looking forward to that meeting where they can come together and discuss. So that's amazing. And then eventually, this makes sure that people are more invested and more engaged because their answers and solution approaches will have already been taken into account, because I also follow that Slack chat. So, yeah. And we already talked about this in Engaged, but being a part of the team, ways of working can be super efficient. So when you deliver the research and withdraw from the team can interpret everything differently. So if you just give the research and go away within the mist, they can be like, oh, I interpret it this way. But no. And to make sure that research findings are used effectively and in the way that they were intended to do, a great example can be a ways of working agreement before the research. So it can be, I like this GIF, so I created a similar one for here. But when a research request comes in, you can determine it with the team about what they can expect from you and what you expect from them. You want to be in the product reviews, you want to be in the discussions, you want to create tickets, you want to create epics with them, or you want to make sure that you are invited for the next 3 months to every single meeting that the team can have about strategic decisions that they're taking. And you can do it because you're already providing a service, and it is not for free, at least not in monetary terms, but in companies' currency, let's say. So that can really work as a good example. And with that, I am wrapping up. So when we treat our research projects as products, that is our strategic principle that we talked about. Research outcome as a product. We understand our user base and we tailor fit research outcomes accordingly. We make it adaptable, flexible, we make it actionable, as clear as possible, and with as low cognitive load as possible. And that way, we get buy-in and engagement. We continuously show along the way how research can make a difference, why they need it, why they need to follow it, why they need to act on it. And this results in a huge change in mindset, and it puts research in a pedestal, so to say. It becomes one of the most critical spots of the workflows. And that creates the flywheel that I talked about. So it places research in one of the most important points, and the more it shows its value, the more research is being requested. So rinse and repeat that process, and you have a user-centric product team, and that is a delight to have. So with that, I say thank you very much for your participation. I honestly hope that you enjoyed it and found it useful. And if you have any questions or if you want to stay connected, I learned how to do QR codes a week ago, and I guess these work. If they don't work, please let me know. But you can reach my LinkedIn profile on the right side, and then my ADP list profile on the left. And I think I'm booked with my ADP list once for the first in the coming weeks, but I'll definitely have some sort of availability, I hope. But yeah, thank you so much. Let's see if we have any questions.